With the global Dokkan celebration now approaching its end, it's time to look back and rank the headlining units from every global Dokkan, worldwide, and million download celebration. I'll be evaluating each dual Dokkan Fest and Dokkan Fest / Carnival pairing as a single collective entry, and will not include yellow coin LRs or any pairings that don't feature a Dokkan Fest unit. While the main focus will be on how strong these units were at the time of their release, we'll also consider how well they performed / aged for the difficult content released around their time. Let's get started with number 12. Cooler Movie Worldwide Part 2. LR Metal Cooler was a good unit with a clear role, and he filled that role well. Cooler had high start of turn stats, and possessed a revive that could be activated once whenever this character was KO'd. He was a very reliable option on the Wicked Bloodline and Terrifying Conquerors teams, but once his revive was used up, he was a bit of a nothing unit. He had no defensive mechanics, and his offense wasn't anything special either, being completely built around his powerful revive. On the other hand, LR Super Saiyan Goku and Super Saiyan Vegeta were arguably the worst Dokkan Fest LR in the history of the game. For the first 3 turns from the character's entry, Goku and Vegeta gained 20% damage reduction and an additional attack that had a high chance to be a super. Combined with their baseline 20% damage reduction, LR Goku and Vegeta were actually quite competent at the beginning of the fight after attacking. However, the instant they lost that ability, this unit became a complete fraud that could get exposed very easily by the tough red zone bosses. Once transformed, they had a baseline 30% damage reduction and an additional that had a 70% chance to be a super. They also performed guaranteed crits when attacking with 24 ki, allowing them to put out very impressive damage. Thankfully, it was very easy to transform with them, making their performance loss after the 3rd turn not too big of an issue.
Psych!
This unit has one of the worst transformation conditions we have ever seen in this game. They would receive a morale boost upon entering the next attacking turn after they performed 3 or more super attacks and received an attack 7 or more times. This was a slot 2 or 3 unit that wanted to be hit 7 times in battle, meaning it was extremely difficult to see them transform, and you were stuck with their mediocre base form for most of the fight. Both LRs were good for their time, but they needed 1 or 2 changes to become truly exceptional cards. Number 11. Transforming Goku and Transforming Frieza. Goku and Frieza were very good on release and were considered by many to be in the highest class of TURs. Firstly, Goku and Frieza possess some of the best leader skills in the game, giving super / extreme class allies 3 ki and 120% of stats respectively. They had the most versatile teams in the game and were the go-to leaders for most players. However, the biggest flaw with these 2 units was that it took far too long to see them at their best. The earliest you could possibly see Blue Goku and Golden Frieza was turn 9, and no event in the game lasted that long. In their initial forms, they only gained 80% attack and defense at the start of turn, and they raised attack by 10% and defense minus 20% with every subsequent transformation. They also stacked attack and defense by 20% on super in their initial 4 states, so the defensive loss in their passives was balanced out by their super attack stacks. They didn't truly start to look impressive until they reached the 3rd or 4th forms, and by then you were pretty much done with the fight. They were good in Super Battle Road, but could take big damage from enemy supers in their initial states. Transforming Goku and Transforming Frieza were without a doubt powerful, but unfortunately, they are the 2nd worst batch of units on this list. Number 10. Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta and Omega Shenron. Gogeta and Omega were the headliners for the 200 million download celebration, and they bumped up leader skill percentages from 120% to 150%. Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta gained 120% attack at the start of turn, and lowered extreme class enemies' attack and defense by 20%. He also possessed a super attack counter and was the first unit to have a massive 70% chance to counter the enemy's super attack. This ability was incredibly powerful and single-handedly made Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta a contender for best TUR in the game. He was one of the better defensive units in the game due to this ability, and on turns where he was able to get his counter off, he would do as much damage as the top TURs. On the other hand, Omega Shenron gained 120% attack at the start of turn, and launched an additional attack that had a 10% chance of becoming a super. He also lowered all enemies' attack and defense by 20%, and wasn't restricted to just a single class like Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta. On average, Omega Shenron hit harder and defended better than Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta did, and he too was in talks for best TUR in the game. The reason both the 200 million download and 250 million download celebration characters aren't higher up is because they were nowhere close to being the best units in the game on release. And that was because they were only TURs, and all the top tier units in the game on their release were summonable LRs. Furthermore, Omega himself didn't age the greatest due to a severe lack of teams, and was stuck with a 150% leader skill for many years, which negatively impacts this duo's ranking. Number 9. LR Vegito Blue and Fusion Zamasu. Maybe the most controversial placement on this list. LR Vegito Blue and Fusion Zamasu are, in my opinion, the weakest dual Dokkan Fest LR pairing here. The main reason this pairing is so low on this list is because of their abhorrent transformation conditions. They could transform starting from the 5th turn from the character's entry when HP is 70% or less, or when there is another Future Saga category enemy or ally in the turn from the 7th turn from the character's entry. This condition was absolutely terrible for 3 reasons. Firstly, the turn restriction started from the character's entry and not from the start of battle, meaning it wasn't just turn 5, but instead that character's 3rd appearance in battle. Secondly, they had a HP restriction stacked on top of a turn restriction, which made it borderline impossible to transform with them. Against Red Zone Fusion Zamasu, you were often getting obliterated right at the start of the fight, or getting one-shot by physical Fusion Zamasu Super, so there was practically no window to transform at low HP from turn 5 and onwards. Lastly, their base forms were only defensive powerhouses for their first 2 appearances, so if they didn't have their active skills available immediately from turn 5, they were complete frauds. Goku and Vegeta guarded all attacks for their first 4 turns, and Fusion Zamasu had 80% damage reduction on his first turn, and 60% damage reduction on his second turn. They were among the best defensive units in the game at the very start of the fight, and were outstanding in the Future Saga Red Zone stages, but became a major liability after their defensive mechanics wore off. Goku and Vegeta also had the most pitiful attack stats for a major summonable unit that we had seen in quite some time, and they became dodge or die starting from their 5th turn. These units also aged rapidly after several months, largely due to the category restrictions in their kit, as well as their horrible transformation conditions. They were top tier for the shorter fights of their time, but they simply have too many glaring flaws that hold them back from placing higher on this list. Number 8. LR Super Saiyan 2 Gohan and Perfect Cell. Starting with LR Cell, he was the most disappointing Dokkan Fest LR release we had seen yet. Cell gained 80% attack and defense at the start of turn, and gained up to 80% defense the more HP you had remaining. Additionally, Cell gained 1 ki and 20% attack per existing enemy, meaning he was often only gaining an additional 20 to 40% attack on average. While he was strong defensively, his attack stats were pitiful compared to the other top tier LRs at the time. He also strangely didn't have shocking speed in his link set, meaning he linked poorly with most villain units outside of other cells. His transformation condition was also difficult to achieve, as he transformed when HP was 30% or less. This was almost impossible to see in Dokkan events, but in Super Battle Road, it was fairly common to see Cell transform. Once transformed, Cell fully recovered HP and was capable of dishing out very impressive damage. He was fantastic in Super Battle Road, but since he was usually stuck in his base form everywhere else, he ended up ranking pretty low on many players' top 10 LR lists. On the other hand, LR Gohan was much more competent in his base form. He gained 100% attack and defense at the start of turn, and gained 1 ki and 10% attack and defense at the start of each turn, up to a maximum of 5 ki and 70% attack and defense. Like Cell, His attack stats early on weren't anything special, but he could deal solid damage after building up. Gohan's biggest strength was his ability to stack defense by 30% on both his 12 and 18 key super attacks, making him a defensive god, especially in the legendary Goku event. He also led perhaps the best category in the game at the time, Kamehameha, which included many of the best units in the game. Now to address the elephant in the room, Gohan's transformation condition. Gohan possesses the worst transformation condition in the history of Dokkan. The sheer number of restrictions stacked on top of each other made it borderline impossible to ever see Gohan transform. He was an absolute beast in Super Saiyan 2, but because you never saw Gohan transform, we only have to consider his performance in base, and while his base form was strong, it wasn't enough to place him above units like LR Kale and Caulifla or even LR Gohan and Goten. Both LR Gohan and Cell aged very well and were still viable options up until 2021. However, they were clearly lacking in several areas on release, and simply weren't as dominant relative to their time as the units ranked above them. Number 7. LR Full Power Frieza and Namek Goku. Perhaps the most misremembered worldwide units by the community due to how fast they aged. LR Namek Goku and Frieza were both titans on release. LR Namek Goku was the best unit in the game for long-form content, thanks to his ability to stack defense by 30% on his 12 key super and his guaranteed additional super attack after receiving an attack. While his starter turn defense was very unimpressive, he was launching 2 to 3 super attacks per turn, allowing him to ramp up his defense at an astonishing rate. His extreme class and Frieza restrictions in his passive were rare to get off when he came out, due to all the tough bosses being super class. But even without the extra offense, he was comfortably ranked the 3rd best unit in the game. LR Full Power Frieza was the more dominant of the two, and was in contention for best unit in the game overall. While LR UI Goku fared better in shorter content such as Extreme Super Battle Road, LR Full Power Frieza was practically unstoppable against the legendary Goku and Vegeta events, and was very powerful in the God of Destruction event. It also greatly helped that LR Frieza had a broken banner unit in 3rd form Frieza, who skyrocketed Frieza's numbers. However, there are 2 major factors that prevent these units from placing higher. Most infamously, both Goku and Frieza fell off hard with the release of the new Red Zone fights during the 7th anniversary, giving them some of the shortest lifespans out of any worldwide units. Secondly, Goku and Frieza's teams didn't receive as much help as they should have. LR Goku being a Saiyan unit could be run on many teams effectively, but his own team was very underwhelming. His banner unit Tech Piccolo was notoriously one of the worst banner units ever, which certainly didn't help. The only good Frieza units on LR Full Power Frieza's team were 3rd form Frieza and EZA transforming Frieza, with the rest of the team being composed of Majin Buu units or support units. The team was built entirely around LR Full Power Frieza, and while he was more than capable of getting the job done, it wasn't uncommon for weaker units on the team to get caught by super attacks. LR Full Power Frieza and Namek Goku were supremely good on release, but a lack of team support and rapid power creep ultimately meant that they couldn't place much higher on this list. Coming in at number 6 is the Cooler Movie Worldwide Part 1 LRs. LR Cooler and Super Saiyan Goku were essentially more refined versions of the Namek Saga Worldwide LRs. Carnival LR Super Saiyan Goku was a far superior tank than LR Namek Goku in comparison to when they respectively released. He stacked defense by 30% on 18 key super and guarded all attacks when HP was 60% or more. He also had a very easy revive condition, reviving with 59% HP recovered when any character in the turn was KO'd, while HP was 59% or less. Post-revive, LR Super Saiyan Goku gained permanent guard as well as a high chance to perform a critical hit. He was an essential slot 1 tank on every one of his teams, and could hold up well against all the tough Red Zone bosses. His damage output also wasn't too bad once he fully built up his attack and his passive, and he was easily a top 3 LR on release. LR Cooler on the other hand was an offensive behemoth. Like LR Full Power Frieza before him, he was the most damaging unit in the game on average, while still being competent defensively. However, the key difference between Cooler and Frieza at launch was their teams. LR Cooler had an almost complete team. His terrifying conquerors and movie bosses team was one of the best villain teams we had ever seen. Cooler's team possessed amazing tanks such as LR Golden Frieza and LR Janemba, great support and utility units such as EZA STR Cooler and LR Metal Cooler, and of course overwhelming firepower in LR Cooler himself. The main drawback with Cooler was that much of his performance hinged on his additionals, which only had a medium chance to be super attacks. If you got unlucky, Cooler could look a bit underwhelming both defensively and offensively. However, if you were able to get 3 or more super attacks in a turn, LR Cooler could easily look like the best unit in the game. At his peak, he could eat a super attack from Red Zone Broly with just raw defense, despite having type disadvantage. LR Cooler and LR Super Saiyan Goku completely dominated the meta on release. However, the units ranked above them are simply even more broken relative to the standards of their time. Number 4 and Number 5, Broly Movie Worldwide. These two pairings are very close in terms of power, and their placements could reasonably be swapped. Personally, I have the Part 2 LRs at number 5, and the Part 1 LRs at number 4. LR Tech Broly was a godsend for villain teams, debuting as one of the 2 best tanks in the game. Tech Broly was invincible on his first turn, and you could choose to transform with him whenever you wanted. Once transformed, he was a defensive juggernaut, boasting 76% damage reduction for his first 3 turns, while also guarding in slot 1. His performance was very similar to LR Beast Gohan, and Broly was universally loved by the community. On the other hand, the LR Super Saiyan Trio was a groundbreaking support unit, unlike anything seen before. When there is another movie heroes or all-out struggle category ally attacking in the same turn, they gain 15% damage reduction and raise all allies' defense by 77% for 2 turns. On a double Super Saiyan Trio lead, they were constantly buffing all allies' defense by 154%, and also raised superclass allies' attack and defense by 30% for 1 turn on their 18-key super. They made the entire team considerably tankier, and brought back into relevance several aged-out units from 2022 and 2023. They were considered the best unit in the game the day they came out, but their flaw became apparent at the end of the celebration, when Dokkan introduced memorable battles Super Gogeta and Janemba. The LR Super Saiyan Trio needed 2 to 3 turns before they could get going at max power, which they were easily able to do against Supreme Magnificent Battle Goku and Frieza. However, Gogeta and Janemba were one-phase fights that could hit extremely hard right away, and LR Goku, Gohan, and Trunks were capable of getting caught very easily by their super attacks turn 1. They possessed a very powerful standby that could help them deal with such bosses, but unfortunately for them, LR Super Saiyan Gohan was a superior standby unit in every single way. If Tech Broly was the ultimate tank, and the Super Saiyan Trio the ultimate support, then LR Gohan was the ultimate offensive force. Gohan gained 77% attack within the turn for every super attack performed, which combined with his ability to super attack up to 4 times within a turn, meant Gohan was obliterating bosses once he was fully built up. He was also quite decent defensively, and under the LR Super Saiyan Trio defensive support, Gohan was capable of tanking the hardest hitting bosses in the game after supering. However, what made this unit arguably the best unit in the game over Beast Gohan and the Part 1 LRs was his aforementioned standby. Not only was Gohan invincible in his standby, once charge count with 35 or more with 7 Dragon Balls obtained, Gohan's Family Kamehameha finish skill was capable of one-shotting every tough boss in the game. He could enter his standby when HP is 77% or less, or starting from Gohan's second appearance, allowing you to stand by at the beginning of the fight and nuke enemies once fully charged. Int LR Broly was the weakest of the 4 LRs on release, but he brought more utility to his team than the others. Broly gained 60% damage reduction at the start of turn and was able to heal per orb obtained, give defensive support to extreme class allies, change key spheres, and also revive starting from turn 5. His biggest asset, however, was his domain, which could be activated when all allies were uncontrollable power category characters. On top of massively buffing uncontrollable power category allies' attack, Int Broly guarded all attacks while the domain was active, making him an excellent tank. His main weakness was the high number of restrictions in his kit. He was only effective on an uncontrollable power team, and many of his powerful abilities were locked behind having his domain active or after his revive triggered. Regardless, all 4 LRs were incredible on release and dominated the game for many months. Number 3. LR Super Vegito and LR Buhan. The Majin Buu Saga Worldwide LRs ran the game on release and can be argued as number 1 on this list. LR Super Vegito was one of the most broken LRs we had seen at the time. His base form was essentially a better version of the 3rd anniversary LRs. Goku and Vegeta gained 120% attack and defense and 30% damage reduction at the start of turn. This was still back in the day when having any amount of damage reduction was really good, so this unit with their LR stats and 120% defense at the start of turn were unstoppable in every event. Offensively, they were quite strong as well, but once transformed, Vegito became the best damage dealer in the game. LR Super Vegito had a medium chance to crit from his passive and counter normal attacks with tremendous power. He annihilated every boss in the game with his crit counters and could solo entire phases of the legendary Goku event by himself. To top it off, he had the absolute busted ability of foreseeing the enemy super attack for 10 turns, virtually eliminating the risk of getting caught off guard with a super. His transformation could be triggered starting from turn 4 when HP was 77% or less. While this was annoying every now and again, this was far easier to achieve back when he released than it is now. In short, he was unkillable in base and annihilated everything he touched once transformed. He was so ridiculously powerful that he ended up outperforming his LR Gogeta counterpart, who released a full year later, and was arguably even better than 6th anniversary Evolution Blue Vegeta. LR Buhan was also comparable in strength and widely considered the 2nd best unit in the game. Due to the link level update that happened around this time, Majin Buu links such as Majin and Metamorphosis were massively buffed, which greatly buffed LR Buhan. He gained 120% attack and defense, and was sitting at 200,000 defense at the start of turn, allowing him to perform great in Super Battle Road and Extreme Super Battle Road. His 18 key super allowed him to stack defense by 30%, making him just as dominant in long events like the legendary Goku event. He had an easier transformation condition than LR Super Vegito, and could transform starting from turn 4 when HP was 50% or more. His healing capabilities were also impressive. Buu-Tanks healed 12% HP at the start of turn, and Buhan healed 10% HP at the start of turn. This allowed you to heal 22% HP the turn he transformed, not including the extra healing from his links. After transforming, LR Buhan could super up to 3 times within the turn, while being the best defensive unit on the team. He was a villain savior, and had several great Majin Buu linking partners that allowed Buhan to effortlessly dominate the game. While the content during the celebration itself was underwhelming, the headlining LRs were some of the most powerful units Dokkan had ever released. Number 1 and Number 2, Global Dokkan Celebration 2025. The single strongest batch of units ever released, every LR from the celebration has been absolutely jaw-dropping. Much like the Broly movie worldwide, these two pairings are close in terms of power, and their placements could be swapped, but I have the Part 2 LRs at number 1. The main reason for this is because of the man himself, LR Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta. As of right now, almost all of the tough bosses in the game possess Ki Blast Supers, and Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta has a 70% chance to nullify and counter Ki Blast Super attacks, while also having a guaranteed chance to counter when HP is below 70%. Furthermore, Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta's damage output is far higher during the first few turns of the fight than the other 3 LRs, which allows him to blitz through the special battle stages. Even in Festival of Battles, Gogeta can serve as an effective floater and has access to his active skill to cover for him against Super Gogeta's and Super Vegeto's normals. Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta's near unmatched effectiveness and current difficult content earns him the title of the #1 LR in the game. LR Omega Shenron's biggest strength is his powerful support abilities. For his first 4 turns, Omega gives Extreme Class allies 2 ki and 70% attack. Additionally, for 2 turns, he raises Extreme Class allies' defense by 70% and gives 10% damage reduction for GT Boss's category allies with 1 Rainbow Ki Sphere obtained. This means that on a double Omega lead, Extreme Class allies would gain 140% defense, and GT Boss's characters would gain a further 20% damage reduction, including Omega himself. He is as busted of a support unit as the LR Super Saiyan Trio, if not more so when you also consider the fact that Omega has a domain that further buffs the damage of everyone on his team. With the recent GT Boss's buffs, Omega's team is now in a much better spot than when Part 2 began, which helps alleviate Omega's team building problems. He is very powerful both offensively and defensively, but can still get caught by Big Boss Supers if Omega isn't on his own team or if he doesn't attack first. As for the Part 1 LRs, LR Goku Black is a powerhouse of a unit and one of the best tanks in the game. Both this unit and the Blue Goku plus Vegeta stack attack by 50% on their 18 ki super, allowing their active skill attacks to do insane damage. With 60% damage reduction and guard, Goku Black can tank almost every super attack in the game, with the exception of the last few phases of Festival of Battles and fully built up Special Battle Goku Black. The Zamasu portion of the card can deal absurd damage when HP is below 60%, but he is a bit worse defensively than Goku Black, so you end up not using him as often. And lastly, LR Super Saiyan Blue Goku plus Vegeta is also capable of dominating every event in the game. Blue Goku is perhaps the best defensive unit in the game, having 70% damage reduction, an 80% chance to dodge, and raising all allies' defense by 60% for 1 turn on his 18 ki super. Blue Vegeta, just like the Zamasu portion of LR Goku Black plus Zamasu, can deal insane damage in slot 3, and has access to one of the strongest active skills in the game. For 4 turns, Vegeta guards all attacks and gives Future Saga category allies 15% attack and defense, and an additional 10% defense for Bond of Parent and Child category characters. They are an incredible run in every single team and event, and can be argued as better than Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta. All 4 LRs from the Global Dokkan celebration are top tier and can completely dominate every event in the game. The gap in power between them is even smaller than that of the Broly movie worldwide LRs, and they rival the level of dominance LR Super Vegito displayed relative to his era. The Global Dokkan Celebration LRs are, in my opinion, the best batch of worldwide / Global Dokkan / million downloads units ever, and should be the gold standard for future releases.